Every year we get massive blockbuster films, some auteur-driven films, and everything in between, but sometimes absolute gems fall through the cracks. So today I want to look at some of the most underrated movies of the year. Before we get into it, let me know some 2024 movies that you think everyone should watch in the comments down below, and over 90% of you guys who watch these videos aren't yet subscribed, so if you don't want to miss out on more reviews, hit that button, but don't waste any more time, let's get into it. Now, I want to pick genuinely underrated movies, so the only rule is that every film that I pick has to have under a 3.7 out of 5 average rating on Letterboxd. The films are in no particular order. I want to start off by talking about It's What's Inside, sitting at an average 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. This was probably Netflix's most viral film of the year, and for good reason. This is a film for people that like twists in their movies, and I think it does that absolutely perfectly. My only problem with this film is the very end of it. I feel like it takes a twist in a way that felt way too unexpected and really just went completely out of the ordinary of what was going on, and this film was nothing if ordinary. I genuinely did enjoy the film, but I think the ending just left a sour taste in my mouth. But it also is just so creatively charged that you can't not have fun with the overall vibes of this story. Yeah, I think a lot of people will think the visuals are some gimmick that make up for a lackluster story, but at least me personally, as a guy who likes a lot of twists, though this isn't some like deep crime thriller, it's very fun, and it's really exciting to see with your friends. Next up for me is Arcadian, with an average of 2.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I genuinely did enjoy this movie a lot. Now, originally when I saw it back at South by Southwest in March, I gave it a crazy score. I think I gave it like an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, it definitely has regressed since then. It's probably sitting at like a 7 out of 10, a 3.5 out of 5, but I still really did enjoy this. As I mentioned in my full review a while ago, at this point, it feels like a mix of Nope, A Quiet Place, and even The Last of Us to an extent, which was just super cool to see. It is a very small budget, very concise thriller. I don't want to give too much away about like the creatures and stuff like that, but it is very inspired by other creature films we've seen in the past of this like isolated, desolate, post-apocalyptic type of world, and I think it works in doing that. The next movie I want to talk about, though, is one of my favorite films of the year. You will be seeing this in my top 15, 20 favorite films of 2024 when that list comes around, and that is Late Night with the Devil, sitting at a 3.4 out of 5 average on Letterboxd. Not only is this one of my favorite movies of the year, it's one of my favorite horror/thriller films of the entire decade. This movie has gone through a lot of controversy. I believe it was one of the first, at least big distributed films of honestly the decade to use AI in any sort of way, and it was literally used in the film for maybe like 6 to 10 seconds for mid-title cards. Now, yes, I did notice it, but it wasn't something that took me out of the film, nor was it something that really added to the plot. It was literally just a title card, and I hate to even be like harping on about it because it's not that big of a deal, but that's the talk of the town with this film. But that aside, this is one of my favorite David Dastmalchian performances. This is one of the first times I think we've ever seen him in any sort of lead role, which is in general just super great because he is always A1 as a side character. But this takes a very different take on like exorcist films, which we've seen a lot of this decade at least, like The Pope's Exorcist, Exorcist Believer, etc. None of these movies are doing anything different. Not only is this movie doing something different with the just overall concept of a late night show host going to extreme measures to finally capture the viewer's attention, but also on a filmmaking level, this is so creatively charged. Not as creatively charged as It's What's Inside, in my opinion, but it still does so much, and it really does just really get you invested in not only this world, but the stakes that David Dastmalchian's character has to go through, because you kind of understand why he's going to these insane lengths to finally pull something crazy off on live television. Next up is Juror number 2, coming in at a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. This is a weird one to talk about because it had a very limited release. I think it was like 50 theaters when it originally dropped. Warner Brothers absolutely butchered it. I got to see it through for-year consideration screenings in my own home, and it releases on Max as a Max original on December 20th. I 110% recommend this movie. It is easily one of the best written films of the entire decade. You have no idea where this film is going to go, and by the end, just the overwhelming guilt that Nicholas Holt's character feels is absolutely insane. It's so palpable. This is my favorite Nicholas Holt performance to date. This is my favorite Zoe Dutch performance to date as well. Also, Toni Collette is in this film, J.K. Simmons, Chris Messina. There is an absolutely stacked cast, and everyone is just going band for band. It is way better than I expected, and if this is Clint Eastwood's final theatrical film, I 100% think it is a hell of a way to go out, because this is an absolute heater. It's not as saucy as you would expect. I really did expect a little bit more on a visual level, but by the end of the film, the visual language at least was giving me something that I just didn't expect by how it had started off. So yes, it did surprise me to an extent. Another really great underrated film from this year was Babes, coming in at a 3.3 out of 5 average on Letterboxd. I genuinely enjoy this movie so much. It's an insanely raunchy comedy movie about this girl that gets pregnant on a one-night stand, and then it is just crazy how they execute the evolution of events that happen in this film. It just gets more and more insane. I normally am not a fan of like super raunchy comedies. Like, this is super Bridesmaids, Hangover-esque. It was absolutely my cup of tea. It was so funny. It was so exciting. I don't have much else to say about the film just because it's not doing something insanely amazing, but I feel like I hear no one talk about this movie. It is at least worth the watch with your friends. Another movie I've barely heard anyone talk about since its release was My Old Ass, starring Aubrey Plaza and Maisie Stella. This movie made me so existential for like a week. I had to crack a beer the second I got home from the theater watching this movie. This one hit me super hard. Your 18-year-old self meeting your 39-year-old self. I just turned 20 like a month ago, and just thinking about the concept of this was absolutely terrifying to me. And this movie not only executes on that general concept really well, but it takes a lot of very, very specific moments and life ideas and puts it into these characters' lives perfectly. But the final film I want to talk about is Kill, coming in at a 3.6 out of 5 average on Letterboxd. I think this is the closest thing we've gotten to John Wick this year. I think it's just so motivated by the same revenge, love type of story that you can't not draw that comparison. It doesn't use its like Indian lore to any other advantages like a film like Monkey Man does, on top of being something of an evolution of John Wick in my opinion. This is purely carnage based on revenge, and I think that's exactly what we need. I think the second half is definitely weaker than the first, but also there is just so much sauce in the second half that even though it's a little bit less story based and it just gets very, very emotionally overwhelming, I still do think overall in its runtime, it's just super fun and exciting. But guys, that wraps up some films that I think are underrated from 2024. Let me know some films you think everyone should check out from this year in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.